Welcome to the Fitness Mindset Podcast. Amanda Micallef here, helping people like you overcome life's setbacks to help you achieve your fitness, career, and life goals. This podcast has been proudly sponsored by my coaching practice, Divine Physiques Coaching, as well as Kyani and the Triangle of Health. To find out more about coaching with myself or more about Kyani and their incredible products, please shoot me an email. Link is in the description below. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode, and I hope you enjoy the content. Guys, welcome back to the Fitness Mindset Podcast. This is episode number 5, and I'm joined by the very lovely Elena. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and doing this.
So, Elena, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the episode, just so people are aware of who you are, what you do for a crust, and what we're here to chat about today.
Sure. So I'm a mindset coach. I became a mindset coach about 6.5 years ago when I did a course with the Mind Academy in Diploma in Modern Psychology. And the course entailed modalities such as hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, as well as life coaching. And I've been doing that ever since then, pretty much. And I see clients on a full-time basis, and I specialize in anxiety and depression. So the way I essentially deal with an anxiety and depression is more so around their behaviors that people do, as opposed to mental illnesses that they have. So I treat it as a behavior, and I deal with it in that way using the modalities that I am trained in.
Cool. So let's expand on some of the modalities that you use.
Sure. So the main modality that I use is hypnotherapy, specifically timeline therapy. So timeline therapy allows the client to essentially go back into the past, past events that they experience certain negative, significant events where they hold, emotional trauma from those events, and they process those events through an abreaction way where they actually face that event, feel the emotion, and then transcend it through the learnings and the positive learnings that they need to gain from that event. And then they bring it up, essentially up their timeline up until now. So that's one component of the tool that I use to help clients deal with their emotional trauma from past events. There's also neurolinguistic programming, which is essentially understanding their behaviors, their thought patterns, and their language patterns. So language is extremely important than people even know. So the kind of words that they use, the kind of thoughts that they have, leads them to the behaviors that they have. So it's them essentially bringing an awareness about themselves and how they do things and why they do things. And then life coaching comes in with, any goals that they may have that they would like to achieve, whether it's a new career, whether it's more money, essentially, or whether it's just something as simple as overcoming their past emotional trauma.
Yeah. Okay. And of the patients that you do see, I mean, I know that it would vary from patient to patient, but what's the average amount of, coaching that would apply to each client? Is there like an average time frame that you can get them from point A to point B successfully through your training modality?
Yeah, sure. So I've got like 3 different programs, and depending on what they're coming to see me for, I would say 90 to 95% of my clients have come to see me for specifically anxiety and depression, or one or the other. And essentially it's about a 12-week program. So it's a good 3 months where we work together each week to go through each, trauma or emotion, and get them to where they want to be. So at the beginning of the program, we go through a deep dive, and we go into a deep dive understanding what's happened in their life, and also what is it that they want, what is it their true desire, and I write it down as their goal that we must achieve by the end of the program. So that's the process in a nutshell.
Yeah, right. So do you give them also tools and strategies that they can keep after the 12-week program?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So whatever in the session, whatever they're learning is something that they can easily take with them all the time and implement it for themselves, but not only for themselves, for the people around them. So they're essentially leaders by example. They will be able to show people how to change just by being the change themselves. And these tools that they gain are essentially become innate. So they're innate tools that they are able to express effortlessly and easily.
Okay, cool. So could you then give me an example of some of the tools or strategies that these people could use in the real world, that you can sort of it allows them to move past certain situations that might have been really challenging? Like, give me sort of 3 examples that you might have in the course.
Yeah, absolutely. So one tool that I find quite useful and also my clients find useful is a tool that I call the switch task. Now, the switch task is relevant to people who are experiencing a lot of negative thoughts and they just can't seem to shake that negative thought process. So when they go through, the timeline therapy, and they gain new learnings and gain new wisdoms from the past experiences, they then take those learnings, and whenever they have a negative thought process come up, they must write what that negative thought is, whether it's on a piece of paper, in their phone, and some people just process it for themselves in their own mind. So they draw up a column, and on the left side they write down whatever negative thoughts they're having, and on the right side they write down a preferred positive thought they would rather have. So what this does essentially is it teaches the brain how to break through the cycle of negative thinking. And the more repetition, the more times they do this, the more they're telling their brain what they'd rather be thinking instead. So the brain loves repetition. The brain needs repetition. As you would know, even with training, I always say to my clients, you've got to treat the brain like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the better it gets. Yeah. Because when you go to the gym and you pick up a weight, you do a dumbbell curl, one session isn't going to be enough to get the muscle that you require, that you want, right? So the more you exercise the brain, it's the same analogy. The more you exercise the brain to do what you want it to do, the better it will get at doing it.
Yeah. So I use a very similar thing in my course, in my mindset camp. It's a module. It's all about reframing. So it's pretty much the same sort of thing. So they'll be faced with a certain situation, obstacle, challenge, and then they've got to basically reframe the situation. And it takes on a very half glass full kind of approach. It's always trying to find the positive out of every situation and just being able to train the brain to see the light at the end of the tunnel of every kind of situation. And it's also something I personally have had to adopt over the years too, is that obviously what you focus on expands, and reframing is a massive tool which anyone can implement, regardless, I think, of the state of mind that you are in. It can really shift things pretty quick for you if you can adopt that at any given moment. So absolutely.
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
I just had a COVID test before. I'm stuck in quarantine, for those that are watching, and completely caught me off guard. And there's 2 ladies at the door. They've shoved a swab down my throat, one in each nostril. And I just cried after it. I was in the worst. It just really put me in a bad way, because I was like, I wasn't expecting that, because we had no notification.
Yep.
And I'm like, I had to quickly step myself out of it. You know what I mean? So, but that, if I didn't, probably could have left me in a foul mood for the rest of the day. So it's trying to really switch gears and pivot when things, catch you off guard, or you just, you can sit there and wallow in your sorrows all day long. So
that's right. I think it also just goes back to the level of coping mechanisms that you have. So, growing up, often we weren't taught how to deal with things. A lot of the time it was like, oh, you'll be okay, get up, just dust yourself off and keep moving. And sometimes that can be the great advice you can give a child or someone. However, there are times where you actually need to sit and process what just happened and process that emotion and have someone to hold that space for you in order for you to be able to do this. I mean, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel the emotion and process it through. It becomes a hindrance if you cut yourself off from not being able to express that emotion then and there, and you just sweep it under the carpet. That's when it becomes an issue, because over time it ends up building up. And that's what I've even noticed with a lot of my clients, that they get to a point where they're in desperation to get help. They come to me at a desperate point where they've reached their lowest point and there's nowhere else to go but up. Right? So they need to go seek the guidance to understand how to get out of that, how to get up. And I feel a lot of the time people wait until they get to that moment of real low feeling and like there's no other way out other than to actually go and get help. And fantastic for those people and how courageous they are to go and seek the help, because as we know, there is quite a bit of stigma around seeing a therapist or seeing a counselor or a psychologist or whatever the case may be. So
I think a lot of people don't want to be told that they're not okay, and that, because I know from myself when I had anxiety and depression growing up, that there was a lot of shame around admitting to the fact that you're just not quite right. And it doesn't mean that you're less intelligent. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't make you uncool. It just means that your emotions have actually hit rock bottom and you've lost a little bit of control. It's like having a bit of a car accident. Sometimes a series of events will happen and really just catch you off guard. And before you know it, you've lost complete control of the whole situation. And it's like, well, you know what? I just need a driving instructor again, because I don't think I know how to drive anymore, and that's okay, but
absolutely.
People sometimes think, and when I say people, I can also speak for myself, is that we may think that people may not care about what's going on in our life, that people only want us when we're up here, not when we're down here. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. There will be people there that will urge you and cheer you on to get the help necessary, whatever that looks like for the individual, which kind of leads me into my next segue. So for the amount of people that you do see, how many of those people would you say actually come to you are already on antidepressants?
I would say probably half of my clients who come see me for depression and anxiety, I would say half have been on antidepressants, and also who were on experienced antidepressants and got off it, or actually were on it as well.
Have you had anyone that started your program and gotten off it by the time they finished your program?
They've cut back, absolutely. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
They have definitely cut back.
All right, cool. So you've done a little bit of research around antidepressants. What sort of studies have you read?
So, I mean, there are plenty of studies out there around antidepressants. I mean, there's, articles in Psychology Today. There's articles with the WHO, the World Health Organization. There's also, a website called Origin, who are they're a non-for-profit website as well, that talk a lot about, all this sort of stuff as well. There's a lot, of research out there, and antidepressants are essentially among the most commonly described medications in the country alone. And in the last decade, antidepressants have tripled. And this is according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics as well. The use of antidepressants has tripled, and even the cost has increased by 130% in the last decade. It's extremely high. And, hearing this, it's so alarming in so many ways, because even the World Health Organization have predicted that by 2030, depression is going to be the number one health concern in 10 years' time. So another 10 years, It's going to be the number one health concern. I think at the moment, depression is number 4 health concern, and it's going to reach number 1 in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
And
depression is,
based...
depression is big business. And I wanted to talk about some of the controversy which surrounds antidepressants today. I personally overcame depression through personal development, training, and healthy eating alone. I was offered antidepressants at the age of 17, and even as a young pup, knew that for me, that wasn't going to be the answer. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't take them, because there are some people out there that are in such a way that in that moment, it's either I take my own life or I take this for a period of time until I'm in a state of mind where I can then maybe take on some personal development and get out of this negative rut. So if we look at it on a scale of 1 to 10, where they're at a minus 100, there are people out there that probably need to be on antidepressants just to bring them back up to 0, where they can get some form of balance and then they can push forward. So
absolutely.
So it's a case-by-case situation. But I guess if a person was in a frame of mind where they had a choice, where can people learn more information about the medication that is being prescribed to them?
The internet is at our fingertips, first of all. It is at our absolute fingertips. Just do your own research. I've read articles where there are, doctors who have even expressed that depression, over 60% of depression has been misdiagnosed by general practitioners alone. That is huge. Misdiagnosis is huge. And it could be misdiagnosis because they have a different kind of mental illness, or they just don't fit the criteria of a depressed state person. Now, as you said, there are variations with depression. There are different types of depressive states. There's, relatively minor to moderate to major. And you can say I've experienced in my field with the clients that come see me, I've experienced all 3, because I've had people who are on antidepressants. Yeah. They became suicidal. They obviously had that chemical imbalance. They had to get onto the medication to stabilize them as well. And then using personal development to help with everyday life, to learn how to cope with everyday life. That's what it comes down to. Knowing how to deal with your emotions, understanding that it's not something that won't go away easily, but it will get better over time with the right tools, with the right, information around us. And I feel a lot of the time, like, people use depression as such a, just a throwaway word. Oh, I'm so depressed. Well, no, you're not. You're probably just sad, and you're just tired because you're so depleted, because we live in such a fast-paced society, such a fast-paced, world, with our phones always at our fingertips, and social media and everything that's on there, just the, influx of information that's hitting us, that is what could be playing a huge role on your psyche. And instead of switching off, going to do what makes you happy, going to reground yourself, training, exercising, eating well, seeing a holistic doctor, as opposed to, it's more so having an open mind, being really open with other things that can help you, other than just taking that medication. And yes, it has its place. Everything has its place. Alternative medicine has its place. Western medicine has its place. But it's being really open and understanding, am I truly depressed? Do I really have a chemical imbalance right now? Or am I just not dealing with life struggles? And do I just need to talk to the right person to gain better coping mechanisms and deal with my emotions so I'm able to process them? Yeah. It's having those questions for yourself, asking those questions for yourself.
See, what I find has really worked for myself over the years, and you can add to this as well through the other things. So through that, I want to learn more about what you do in your 12-week course in a bit more detail. But in my 6-week course, I've really condensed what I do on a daily basis, packaged it, and a few things need to happen. Your environment is a huge one. So the people you surround yourself by, your immediate environment in terms of the home space, the language, the thought process, just the way everyone else around you thinks is what's going to really heavily impact you. Having a mentor or mentors in life, reading certain books, whether it's a 10-minute video that you listen to each day. I think evening meditation before you go to bed is it not scientifically proven that meditating can actually change the structure of your brain?
Absolutely. There's a lot of evidence out there how meditation, as well as hypnotherapy, helps to reprogram your mind. You know, it sends different messages to your mind to adjust and to release whatever you need to release and let go of. And it just all goes back to taking that time and having that moment of 10 minutes to yourself to self-reflect. That's what people are lacking, that time, or making the time to genuinely look within and self-reflect, and using tools such as meditation. And a lot of the time I've got clients saying, oh, but I don't know how to meditate. And I say, well, how do you know you don't know? Like, who told you that you didn't know? Like, what perception do you have around meditation? For me, my form of meditation is doing box breathing. That's a form of meditation.
So
is sitting in silence.
Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah. So box breathing is essentially breathing into your belly for a count of 4. So as you breathe in, you're counting to 4, holding for 4, and you're breathing out for 4. So box breathing is extremely beneficial for people who suffer from anxiety, because when you consciously breathe, and especially breathing in through your belly and holding that breath, eradicate anxiety. Anxiety cannot exist when you consciously breathe.
Yeah, sorry. So as you were talking, it kind of just cut out and froze then. So we'll go back to when you breathe in. So it's very much like a diaphragmatic breath in lifting. So we breathe in through the mouth.
That's right.
So you hold that for 4 seconds. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're breathing in through your nose, and you're pushing your belly, through your nose, and you're holding. So you breathe in for 4 and you're holding for 4, and then that's when you breathe out through your mouth for 4.
Right.
So you're releasing.
Okay.
So doing that kind of conscious breathing, so 5 to 10 breaths every morning, every night, in the afternoon, anytime you pretty much can. This is great for people who are anxiety sufferers. Because
why does it work? Why does it work?
Because it's essentially you're consciously breathing, so you're becoming present in the moment. And if you think about anxiety, people are always fearing of the future. People are anxious about what's going to happen or what's happened. It's literally bringing you back to center yourself and be one with yourself. So there's nothing else you need to worry about other than your breath in and out.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So anything else that you want to kind of add in terms of antidepressants? Because we kind of just skimmed the surface with it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about some of the things that you might have read. I know that I'm pretty sure there was a research study paper on the Harvard website in relation to antidepressants. So they ran a trial. Now, from memory of this study, there were people who weren't clinically depressed that went on these antidepressants. And at the end of the trial, they actually had formed and I believe, and don't quote me, but suicidal tendencies. So this is some of the issues around some of these antidepressants, is that when you are offered antidepressants, if you are in a position mentally where you think you can have a choice against it, it does pay to do some research about what's being prescribed to you. And there are websites online where you can actually learn more about any medication, not just antidepressants, but the medication that you do take and the possible side effects, which can at times do more harm than good. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I've had clients that have experienced a lot of the side effects from the medication, specifically, taking antidepressants, where before they never had suicidal thoughts, and then they started getting suicidal thoughts when they jumped on the medication. They also started experiencing really random thoughts that, and I won't express what they are just for, the
That's okay. Yeah,
confidentiality, but really, really random thoughts about their sexuality that they never had even questioned before as well. So it was bringing up things, and it started from the point their medication began kicking in, right? And they had never experienced anything like that before. Now, it's interesting that you talked about the studies around, that Harvard did. I actually haven't read that article, but I will after we get off this call, because that will, help me to also understand even deeper with my clients when they come to me with this sort of stuff as well, that they experience themselves, that they experience more side effects for them. And there are times where I've heard, and then they start experiencing all these other symptoms, such as the suicidal thoughts, such as, paranoia, such as hallucinations. So it sends them like from one point to a whole other point.
Yep.
So you must, like, I cannot express enough how important it is to really know yourself and question whether it is something that you do need, or if it's just something you need to, if there's something in your life that you need to change, whether it's, seeing a therapist, changing your diet, exercising, because that one small change and expanding on that one small change can have such a profound impact. And I say this because I also speak from experience myself, and I haven't mentioned yet, but I also am a former anxiety and depression sufferer. So I overcame it with the right therapy, with natural, alternative medicine as well, through exercise, through food, through, meditation, and so on and so forth, and time.
People underestimate, I think, at times how long it actually does take to overcome, your depression and anxiety. And I know I can speak from experience. I personally suffered. I was about 17. I had a suicide attempt at the age of 17. Started therapy. I was working with a homeopath. I found she was the best for me. I really resonated with her. And that's important too. When you're finding a therapist, try a few different people. See what resonates and works for you.
Yes.
Psychologists didn't really work for me, and they still, I've seen some over the years here and there, and I've never really, they've never really done anything for me personally. Anything that's a little bit more alternative works for me, works for my brain, the way I think, the way I'm wired. So that's what I'm saying. Do your research, try a few different people, see what works. But like, I've been doing personal development for about 16, 17 years, and I'm still learning and growing and still have bad days. So when you went through depression and anxiety, how old were you, and how long did it take you to come out of it?
Yeah. So when I did my course 6.5 years ago, I didn't realize that I actually had anxiety. I just thought I was just that way inclined. I thought that was just who I was. And a lot of people do that they identify themselves as being an anxious person or a depressed person without truly understanding where the cause is, where it came from. And I only really discovered that I first started doing anxiety when I was age 4, because that's where my subconscious mind took me back when I did the timeline therapy through the course that I did. And having that awareness, it blew my mind. I was like, I remember the event as well, and what had happened, and how I took that on as anxiety. And, from then on, manifested it throughout my entire life. So it was only up until 6.
Are you open to talk about that? Because I find that
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, so what happened?
Yeah, sure. So at age 4, I had gotten in trouble by my father for something I didn't do. So I was playing with my cousins and my older brother. I've got an older brother who's only 1 year older than me, and they used to all get up to mischief. And I was young, and I'd just follow them around and have fun. And obviously, I don't even remember what we did, or maybe we didn't obey their rules or whatever, because back then there were a lot of rules to obey. Coming from an Eastern, European background, it was all about the rules. And I'll never forget, he lined us all up in age order, pretty much. And I was the last, one at the end, because I was the youngest. And he just stared us down. He didn't even have to say anything, because the look of fear, like that he had, like the look he gave us, was enough for me to fear what could have happened next. Like I wasn't even like physically hit or anything like that, or smacked. It was just the look that we were given that was enough to send me down that spiral of fear and anxiety. And it's funny, because if I tell my dad that, he'd be like, what are you talking about? I don't even remember that. But that's something that, I took on as a child as something that was quite traumatic in its own right, and took that with me without it. It was unconscious. I took that with me throughout my whole life until I discovered that that's what the cause was 6.5 years ago. And that's something that I deal with my clients. I deal with the causes of their behaviors, of their issues, of their problems. So we go way back. I've had clients that have gone back to the womb, like when they've been in the womb of their mother. And whether it's, real or not is irrelevant. That's where their mind needed to take them back to process something.
And is that all done through hypnotherapy?
Yes.
So what does a session in hypnotherapy actually look like? How long does it go for?
Essentially, it's about an hour, sometimes an hour and 15. It depends on how long the client is in hypnosis for and how much they need to process out of each event. So honestly, it doesn't even take that long. It's quite quick. And after the hour's done, I have got clients saying, "Oh, that was quick?" And it's like, "Yeah, well, you were just under for like 40 minutes," and they're like, "Wow, that just like went so fast." Yeah. They can still hear me. They're still conscious. I think there's a lot of fear around, I won't be able to hear, that they're going to make me do something stupid. It's not like that. It's clinical hypnotherapy, and it's a very safe space. And, I always make sure that the clients do and are aware of hypnosis. I also give them a hypnosis facts sheet, so they have an understanding and eradicate any misconceptions they have around hypnosis as well. So in saying that, I also make sure that whatever hypnosis work we do, I close the gap between the unconscious and the conscious mind about that event. So I make sure that event gets concluded. And the way I conclude that is once they come out of hypnosis, we do conscious work. So that's where the NLP comes in, where we process any learning that came up multiple times. We process it in a conscious state, so then they can take their true life learning with them and move forward with that consciously. So it no longer becomes an unconscious act anymore, and they have this newfound awareness. So that's it's amazing, and it's incredible to see. I mean, what I find so fulfilling is from when they come to see me to how they transition and how they change. Like, you see the change before my eyes, and it's just so fascinating to watch. It's really incredible.
Self-awareness. So you obviously mentioning self-awareness, so huge. It's like it's letting it bubble from beneath the surface, bringing it up. And when you can easily interpret any situation or your feelings or how you could have, should have reacted to certain things, life becomes just that much easier when you can do that. And that's why it is important to invest time, money, and attention to natural therapies rather than, if you can avoid antidepressants, if you're in a position to avoid antidepressants and you can do something like that, we can really deal with the problem head on. I mean, I personally would encourage people to go down the other route. Of course, it is definitely a case-by-case situation, but yes,
absolutely.
when you go through it yourself and you see others that they transition through, it's so much more rewarding. So there's so much more progress to be made down the other road. So
absolutely.
Yeah, look, before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
The only thing really that I would love to share is, even with depression, because I had experienced depression later in life, because I had done so much work myself before I had even experienced depression, I was able to use my higher self to actually acknowledge that I was depressed. So because I had done so much work and I had the self-awareness, like you said, it's having that self-awareness. And I came from an observation perspective. I was able to observe my behavior and observe my thought process. And that's how I knew I was experiencing depression, through understanding, having, social avoidance symptoms, also not laughing at the normal things I was laughing at, on a daily basis. And laughing is my favorite thing to do. I love laughing, where I stopped laughing because, I had gone through an event that shook me to my core, which then manifested into depression. And, I had increased sleep patterns where I just wanted to sleep. I never wanted to leave the house. And then on top of that, experiencing that bit of anxiety that went hand in hand with the depression. But when my higher self acknowledged that I was depressed, and if I felt like if I didn't have that level of awareness or self-awareness, and if I hadn't done the work, I feel the first thing I probably would have done is gone to the doctors and been diagnosed with depression, so to speak, and been given antidepressants. Whereas because I had done the work and I had that level of self-reference and self-awareness, I was able to acknowledge, okay, I even remember when I was sitting there and I had that epiphany. I went, oh, Elena, you're depressed right now. And then I said, it's okay. This too shall pass. And it did, with, again, the right therapy, with time, with patience, with being patient with yourself. I feel like people just want quick fixes, and we live in a quick fix world where, take a pill, lose the weight, take a pill, feel better, all that sort of stuff. But it's not like that. And it's doing the work, putting in the time, the effort, the money is just worth it in the end. And I speak from experience, you speak from experience. And now seeing, like, even so many of my friends, as they've even watched my own journey, they've sat back and watched my entire journey in the last 12 years. I've been, doing personal development, and now they're starting to come see me because they're ready to deal with whatever they need to deal with. I've got family members seeing me. I've got my closest friends coming to see me because they have better understanding, of how they need to deal with and process their emotions. So, yeah.
So the thing is about, obviously, when you're going through that personal development process, is that you're building on your mental strength, so that you're less likely to fall off the proverbial bandwagon. So a lot of people people who are constantly falling off the bandwagon, there is no bandwagon, it's your choices. There's you and your choices, right?
Absolutely.
When you don't have the right mechanisms and skill sets in place, and you're not practicing that muscle, that side of yourself, you are likely to keep going into old habits. So this is why a pill for fat loss and a pill for this and a pill for that, it just doesn't change anything. Yeah, we live in a world of instant gratification, but quick fixes often lead to years and years of frustration and ups and downs and self-sabotage.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we can go on about this subject for days, to be honest. There is like so much to talk about. Maybe we could even continue another segment on expanding, awareness and how to go about doing that as well, because there's so much information.
So I'd be happy to meet once a month, and we can explore other different topics. Love to do that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Likewise.
do you have a couple of links that we can maybe share on those studies, some of the studies that you might have read?
Yeah, definitely. I can send them to you after this call, and you can add them there if you wanted. Yeah.
Cool. I shall do just that. So what I'll do, Elena, you can send me all your social links. I'll pop them down below in the description. Yep. So if you want to get in touch with Elena, learn more about her 12-week course, feel free to reach down below. We'll also put some links to those scientific research around antidepressants, and of course, you can make your own decision around that. Elena, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If one thing you could sort of share with the audience, what would that be?
Oh, one thing. I've got lots of things. No, one thing in terms of like a piece of advice.
Yeah, like a quote or bit of advice, what would it be?
Self-reflection is key, and gratitude. If you are not grateful for even the smallest things in your life every day, then you're missing out on life's treasures. So if you can even write one thing every day that you're truly, truly grateful for, and really feel the emotion and continue on expanding on that over time, that is the key to true and real authentic happiness.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you liked the content, please make sure you support the show by giving a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and turn on your post notifications so you are the first to know when a new show is released. If you are interested in having me present a speaking presentation in your enterprise, sporting club, or event, please send me an email. Link is below in the description. Thanks once again. You've been amazing to last this long, and join me again on the next episode.